My name's Bruno Mano. I'm from the Walton Family Foundation, and the luncheon session is an attempt to talk a little bit about education reform in New Orleans, not for the purpose of, quote, praising New Orleans, but to talk a little bit about the struggles they've been through as they've tried to really transform a system that in many respects, at least with regard to results or outcomes, is similar to the system here in Detroit.
New Orleans was one of the worst school districts in the country before Katrina, and the effort with the Recovery School District, though nascent, was really not effective. It was really post-Katrina where the state intervened, took over most of the schools, and reset the table that the change began. And I want to talk just a little bit about what resetting the table means. All of the schools that we took over the facilities became operated by the state. The kids were ours, but the teachers, the employees, and the principals were not. All of those individuals had to reapply for their jobs. And the collective bargaining agreement that existed pre-storm existed with the old school district and not with the state, so we were unburdened by it. Now, when you reset the table like that, you have an opportunity to really dramatically change the equation. That doesn't guarantee that you will, but you have the opportunity to change the equation. Kids have a chance now in New Orleans that they didn't have before the storm. First, you should know the Recovery School District is not limited to New Orleans. It is a statewide recovery school district. Any school in the state that falls below the standard for a period of time is eligible for takeover, and we have now taken over schools in Baton Rouge and in Shreveport. And we have another 30 schools in rural parts of the state that are under supervisory agreement. We've taken over schools in rural communities as well. The effect of taking over schools has been very powerful. So we have schools that go into what we call academic unacceptable status. They usually go there and they stay there. And districts are really not capable because, frankly, they don't have the same tools that we have to be able to get out of this pickle. So the schools don't normally come out. But once we started taking over schools in Baton Rouge and in Shreveport and in a little community outside of Baton Rouge, and people realized that there really was going to be a consequence for continued failure, 29 schools came out of academic unacceptable status this past year. 29 schools. I didn't have to lift a finger to take one of them over. I just took some other ones over and scared these people straight. And I'm going to tell you that's part of what has to happen. I was talking to Michael about y'all's new district. You're going to have to take some over to let people know that you're serious. If you stay focused on the kids, you can do it. It's very hard. We need new schools to be back there in the background, ready to take over. So we have a plan. Every year we're going to take 4 schools out of business, no matter what. 4 schools come out of business. We've done this 2 years running. And Matt is in the background preparing and incubating new schools, new leaders, new strategies, new game plans, a new team and a new board that will come in. And Matt doesn't care which school I give him or which school he goes to. He just knows he's going to get 4 schools.
We were a single point of reference for funders locally and nationally to come and say, we want to participate, but we don't know how. And I think that's a really important point about the private sector's need to trust Paul in setting up the conditions and in responding quickly. And this is where the philanthropic community responded to the very clear and I think unified call to replace that old structure with new pipelines. The primary piece is the talent provider. The school builders follow. And right now in New Orleans, Paul is not making this up about innovation. The ideas that are starting to spin out of the new schools we created which are all autonomous charter schools, I think are going to be groundbreaking. There's some small evidence that these new tool builders, not only because they have the autonomy to create a new idea, but suddenly they have a market within New Orleans of clients that they can work with in a fairly autonomous environment because Paul is protecting them and letting them work. So the innovation starts to happen at a far quicker pace. So the learning is legitimate, and we also have scale where we can actually test whether these things get big and work.
It's the place where people want to be, and it's a place where they feel as though they can actually contribute most significantly. I think our efforts in the New Orleans community began very much as a very immediate response to a very clear sort of supply issue that was very evident when we were thinking about rebuilding. And so we, of course, wanted to do everything we could to support the schools and the districts that we had been working with, in many cases for over 15 years, to continue to supply teachers. And so our initial effort was very much grounded in that. But of course, what it's become is way beyond just an immediate supply issue, and really being able to partner strategically with schools and districts to really fuel human capital pipelines long term. And so we've gone from about 50 teachers in the region to 490 first or second year teachers, which is what we're supporting right now. It was the most ambitious regional growth plan that Teach for America made the commitment to take on 3 years ago.
He talked about resetting the table and the need to reset. Based on the conversation we had the other day on the phone, there are at least two ways that I think state law has now been reset to give you the ability to do things that you couldn't do before. One is the statewide district, as I understand it, and then there's also been some changes in charter law. So would you talk a little bit about how you think the situation now has been reset?
This is the opportunity of a lifetime. It has to be housed, this again may be self-serving, but in one person that's not a political entity. I don't report to the governor. I plan to do this through the first term of the next governor. We're not going to actually own these schools, but we're going to be a lot more in the business of trying to find the right talent to actually run these schools when they get into that. I'm very hopeful that, let's say there's going to be up to 200 of them. There's 200 in our bottom 5%. All of them have 95% of their kids not proficient. And what drives me every day, we have our first granddaughter, and I mean, if I'm speaking at places, I put her picture up. She's 6 months old, and one reason is what's burned in my brain is if Ella Grace isn't going to a school, no one's going to that school. It's just simple. This isn't rocket science. But when you get to the point where you actually have to say, this isn't working, and you're going in here, we have the authority to remove that contract and all its implications, and would do so if it got to that point. Charter school, there's about 50 of them right now that would come outside the cap. It would be schools of excellence that allows for 50 more. 2 cyber schools that we're going to have to put some parameters around, but we're very excited about trying to see that. I give seat time as a state superintendent seat time waivers, and this has really allowed the virtual world. I mean, I looked around to alternative high schools, and they were junk mainly. So I thought, what's the problem here? We don't have a lot to lose. I mean, I was this alternative high school kid, so we've given seat time waivers. And the thing is, you could sleep during class, and you could be paid for it. But boy, we didn't want them learning physics at 11 o'clock at night online. You know, it was just insane. So we busted through that. And the other one is alternative cert. We finally have an opportunity to, I think, pressure schools of ed to update the way that we train teachers. We shouldn't be doing teacher remediation, in effect, after the fact. And so that can be done through professional associations, intermediate school districts, and others, and we're going to take advantage of that.
The role of the philanthropic community in New Orleans was crucial to jumpstart the effort. So New Schools for New Orleans had not come along and had not been funded, then we would have been put in the same old position as a district was of trying to find human capital. And we would have hired the same old people who would do the same old thing to get the human capital equation. You can't just work on a teacher pipeline, and you can't just work on a leader pipeline. You have to now work on a school pipeline. Let me tell you something. If Mike had in his back pocket 5 schools that were ready to go with a board, a leader, a program of work, a particular strategy, and willing to take on a school, and had built that plan for a whole year, If he had 5 of those in his back pocket, how easy would it be for him to take over a school? And how successful is he likely to be if he does? But if, on the other hand, he's got to sit back and say, okay, I got to get Teach for America in here, and I got to get new leaders in here, and I got to, you know, and I'm going to put them in this school when I take it over next week, that's not a real high prospect of success. And that's where I think building the strategy, and I think, you know, Mike's in a great place right now. Take the lessons that we've learned the hard way and plan this strategy. You got a year and a half. Plan how you're going to do this. We didn't have time to plan. It was helter-skelter, believe me. But plan it, and boy, get a little support from the philanthropic community, and I think you'll be able to move out quickly. And the value will be when you hit the ground running and it's successful right out of the box, the community will be behind you more quickly. In New Orleans, man, it was awful for the first year and a half. It was just awful. But you have a great chance here in Detroit and in Michigan.
I really appreciate when a friend like Paul can make the pitch. I mean, the pitch is some help to give us these 5 in our hip pocket, because we're not going to be able, we won't have any money to do that until you actually take over the school. That's the catch-22. So you need a year of other help to get these plans ready, so then when we start getting the state aid for those schools, which wouldn't be till September of 11, then you've got it in place. Otherwise, that's the catch-22 we've been operating with, is now we have the money, now we can do something, but it's almost too late. But our state folks have just been tremendous, and I think that's a really good way to think about it. The specific plan for a handful of schools that we can get some folks on board to plan this out and have some philanthropic help to pay for that until we start getting the state aid, which wouldn't be till 11.